Tsuro Phoenix Rising is an exciting game for 2 to 8 players which plays in 20 to 60 minutes. In the game, you will guide your Phoenix along its path through the midnight sky, racing to reach lanterns in order to earn star tokens. The winner is the one who first collects 7 star tokens, or is the last Phoenix remaining in the sky. To set up, assemble the game board by connecting the 4 game tray pieces. Place the star tokens in a pile next to the game board. Each player chooses a Phoenix pawn and sets it at the outside edge of the board, facing any one square as its starting position. Only one pawn may occupy a starting position. Each player also receives 1 life token and places it in front of them. Separate the path tiles into 2 stacks by type. You'll notice that 16 tiles have gold stars on them. These are the center tiles. The edge tiles have no stars. Shuffle each stack. Set the shuffled edge tile stack near the board with the Phoenix tile on top. The 16 center tiles each have a cloud-framed side. Lay out all the center tiles randomly with the cloud-framed side up onto the middle 4x4 grid of the board. Next, place the lantern markers on the 7 center tiles that show a glowing lantern icon in their color. Do not place a lantern marker on a center tile with a lantern icon that is dimmed. Deal each player 2 path tiles from the top of the edge stack. Then, place the Phoenix tile back on top of the edge stack. The youngest player goes first and receives the first player marker. The game takes place in turns, beginning with the first player and continuing clockwise. To start your turn, create your path. You'll extend the path in front of your pawn. If the space in front of you is empty, you'll place a new tile on the board. If there's already a tile in front of you, you'll flip and or rotate it to extend your path. If you're adding a new tile, like in the first turn of the game, choose one of the 2 tiles in your hand and place it in front of your pawn. The new path tile can be placed with either side up and in any orientation you choose, as long as it extends your pawn's path. Discard the tile you do not place to the bottom of the edge tile stack. When your pawn initially enters the board, you can choose any one of the path options offered on the face of the tile. Note that one side has paths in the center, while the other also has paths coming in at a diagonal. All of them are valid. Later in the game, you may begin your turn with your pawn stopped at a dead end on the board, heading onto an existing tile. Instead of placing a new tile, you will flip and or rotate the tile in front of your pawn to extend your path. If one or more players have pawns on the tile you're flipping or rotating, the owners of the pawns move them out of the way, then after you manipulate the tile, they return them to their original positions on the tile, even if there's no path under them. If there's a lantern on the tile to be manipulated, pick it up and then place it back down once you've chosen the new orientation of the tile. Once your path is extended in front of your pawn, follow it until you reach the path's end, which may take it across several tiles. Please note that if your pawn is following a path on a diagonal, your pawn moves to the next diagonal tile and not one that is orthogonally next to your current tile. Tsuro Phoenix Rising is about creating new stars in the night sky. During your pawn's movement, anytime you exit a tile containing a lantern marker, you've created a star. Place a star token on the tile, but you'll move the lantern marker later in the turn. And be careful, you do not create a star if you simply stop on a tile with a lantern marker. You must leave the tile to create it. Once you've finished moving to the end of your path, go along the path you created in order and move each lantern marker from the tile it shares with a star token to a different tile featuring a matching colored icon. The tile you choose cannot contain your pawn, a star token, or another lantern marker. Once you've moved the lanterns, remove all star tokens from the board and place them in front of you. After you've moved and scored stars, any other players who now have extended paths in front of their pawns get to go one at a time in clockwise order, starting with the player to your left, moving lanterns and scoring stars as necessary. During movement, a pawn is removed from the board if any of the following things happen. Its path extends off the edge. 2 pawns meet in the same position on a path, moving in either direction, in which case they collide and are both removed from the board. Also, if a pawn enters an endless loop, it is removed from the board. In all these cases, your removed pawn is placed in front of you. When your pawn leaves the board, you still score stars for tiles you passed through containing lantern markers. However, if your pawn leaves the board and you do not have your life token, you're eliminated from the game, and those stars you just made score nothing. After you move and score any stars, if your pawn has stopped heading into an empty space with no tile, draw the top 2 tiles from under the Phoenix. Your turn is now over, and the player to your left begins. Phoenixes are unique in that they can burst into flames and rise from their ashes. With that being the case, if your pawn is off the board, you have a chance to rise again on the outside edge of the board by spending your life token. In fact, if you have your life token, you can even choose to sacrifice your entire turn just to remove your pawn from the board to give yourself a better opportunity on your next turn. Let's say it just became your turn and your pawn is off the board. First, discard your life token out of the game. Next, place your pawn next to an empty square on the outside edge of the board, just like you did at the beginning of the game. Draw the top 2 tiles from under the Phoenix tile, choose one to play as your path and discard the other one to the bottom of the stack. Then, move and score stars as usual. When you rise from the ashes, you get to keep all your previously collected stars. Now, if your turn starts with your pawn off the board and you don't have a life token, or if there are no empty spaces left on the edge of the board, then you cannot return, and instead, you're eliminated from the game. Tsuro Phoenix Rising can end in 2 ways. First, if ever a player scores 7 or more stars, whether it's on their turn or during someone else's turn, they have created a new constellation. Players complete the current round and then the game ends. This means the player to the right of the first player will always take the final turn of the game. At the end of the final round, the player with the most star tokens is victorious. If there is a tie for most star tokens, then the tied player who did not use their life token wins. If more than one tied player still has their life token, or none have their life token, then all tied players share the victory. The other way the game ends is if only one pawn is on the board, and all other players cannot come back because they've already used their life tokens, or if there are no open edge spaces to which they can return. In this case, the game ends immediately, and the remaining player on the board wins the game, regardless of the number of star tokens they have collected. For an additional strategic challenge, see their rulebook for an advanced version of the game called Winds of Change. When you're done playing, simply fold the board together to take it apart. And now you know how to play Tsuro Phoenix Rising. Thank you so much for watching.